بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ثم أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In yesterday's Salatul Taraweeh, we recited some very powerful chapters from the Quran. We concluded Suratul Kahf, which is the famous chapter which we recite on Fridays. And then our Shaykh recited Suratul Taha. Surah Taha is also a very significant surah. It's actually the surah that caused the conversion of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. I'm sure we've heard the famous story that once Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu was going out to actually murder, na'udhu billah, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As a non-Muslim, he had had enough of the trouble that he saw being caused in the town. But along the way, he met a companion who said to him, go to your own family first. So he goes towards his sister's house, and then he sees his sister, or he hears his sister rather, from outside, and her husband reciting verses of the Quran. He enters the home. He even beats his sister. Imagine, he beats his own sister. And when he sees the blood flowing from her and the bruise, he comes back to his senses and he says, show me what you were reading. And then she showed him, well, she said to him, first you must become pure. So she made him go and have a bath. And then he came back, and then he was shown the ayat, the verses of Surah Taha at the start. Taha, ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa illa tadhkiratan liman yakhsha. And these verses struck Umar radiallahu anhu so hard that he became a Muslim after this. So we should definitely read the meanings of these verses that shook the man known for being so staunch and strict and harsh, such that he wanted to murder the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These verses caused his heart to melt. Similarly, in Surah Taha, we have a mention of the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam in quite some detail. When Musa alayhi salam goes to Fir'aun and preaches to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. And then in the next surah, so now we've moved past Surah Taha, we have Surah Maryam. Rather, before Surah Taha was Surah Maryam. Surah Taha was after. And Surah Maryam is, of course, a chapter, you can hear it in the name, the chapter of Mary, which talks about the mother of Jesus, Maryam. So we see that in these two surahs, Taha and Maryam, which come next to each other, two very important figures are talked about, Moses and Jesus. And these are the two figures that are revered by the two other Abrahamic faiths, which makes up the trio of Abrahamic faiths, Islam, Christianity and Judaism. So all of these prophets are addressed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us the true narrative on these prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in this surah that these prophets were but servants of Allah. In fact, yesterday the Shaykh recited very, very powerfully the ayah when Maryam alayhi salam came back to her town after she had given birth to Isa alayhi salam miraculously, and she was scared what the people were going to say. They would accuse her of maybe committing zina, of having a child outside of wedlock. So she came back and she's holding the child. And yes, the people did say that, what have you done? Ya ukhta Harun, ma kana abuki imra'a saw'in wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. That your family were not evil people, O Maryam. What have you done? You've brought a child and you're not even married. And then, what does Maryam do? فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She points towards the child. She points towards the child. And the people said, how can a child who is in his cradle speak? It's impossible. You're telling us that a baby is going to speak to us, just born, just been a few hours? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused a miracle to take place. And this baby, the baby Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, spoke in his cradle and said, Jazakallah khairah, قال إني عبد الله. Say, surely I am but the slave of Allah. آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. I have been given the book and I have been made a prophet. So it is as if the first words of Isa alayhi salam negates the horrendous claim that people make regarding him. That horrendous claim that he is the son of God. Subhanallah, na'udhu billah. That horrendous claim, Isa alayhi salam, his very first words on earth negates that. And he says, Inni abdullah, I am but the slave of Allah. Now why is this very important for us to know? Because we are living in a multicultural society, a multi-religion society, where we will be in contact with many people who will adhere to different religions. In particular, the Christian faith, as you could say, well, it was the majority religion in this country, but the latest census seems to show that atheism has overtaken it. SubhanAllah. But as people, Muslims, we are a minority living in this country. We need to be aware of these sorts of discussions. The reality of Isa alayhi salam, the reality of Moses, so that when we have conversation with people of other faiths, we can faithfully present what the Quran says about these prophets. And we can also provide the evidence for it, so that we can spread this message of Islam far and wide. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to reflect on this Quran. Again, this is just a quick kind of overview, but we should inshallah take our time out during Ramadan to read the translation of the Quran ourselves. When we hear these little points, I'm giving you just indicators that you should go and pick up Surah Taha, read the beginning. Pick up Surah Maryam and read what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about Maryam and Jesus. So this is just a little motivation, inshallah. May Allah give us all the ability. Wa sallallahu ala nabi al-kareem. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We have a few minutes left till Salatul Maghrib, so let's engage in dua, inshallah, for ourselves, our communities, our families, and for the ummah across the world who are much in need of our prayers and our supplications. And as we know, the fasting person, when they break their fast, they have an accepted supplication. So let's not waste these moments and use them wisely. Barakallahu feekum.